There comes a time in life, usually somewhere after 60, when the world around you starts shifting in ways you never agreed to. People you love move on. People you depended on drift away. The routines that once gave life meaning suddenly feel empty. And the mirror, the calendar, even your own mind, none of it matches the person you still feel like inside. You find yourself standing in the middle of a life that used to make sense, and suddenly everything feels foreign. The kids are busy, old friends don't call like they used to. The body that once carried you without question now hesitates, aches, forgets. And somewhere deep down, a quiet question begins to form, a painful one. When did I stop belonging to my own life? You try to keep up. You try to stay positive. You try to pretend the emptiness isn't growing. But the harder you push, the heavier everything feels. It's like life is moving on without you, leaving you behind in the shadows of your own memories. Maybe life didn't leave you behind. Maybe a part of you stopped moving long before the world did. Because the truth is, the outer world only feels stuck when the inner world becomes frozen. Frozen in old grief, old fear, old stories about who you are allowed to be at this age. You're not broken. You're not done. You're not invisible. You're just standing at the edge of a truth most people never face. Nothing in your life will change until you do. So before we talk about fixing what's around you, we must begin where real transformation happens, inside the quiet landscape of your inner world. 1. Your inner world is the blueprint of your outer life. People often say, life gets harder as you get older. But monks say something very different and far more honest. Life doesn't get harder. Your inner world gets heavier, and eventually the weight starts to spill into everything you see, because everything you feel becomes everything you notice. Fear doesn't stay inside your head. It colors the world around you. Old wounds don't disappear. They change how you interpret every smile, every silence, every disappointment. Loneliness doesn't sit quietly. It turns ordinary days into uphill climbs. When your inner world is unsettled, even the smallest things become overwhelming. A quiet house feels like abandonment. A forgotten phone call feels like rejection. A morning ache feels like proof that your best years are behind you. But the truth is far more gentle and far more powerful. Your outer world isn't the problem. Your inner world is the blueprint. Change the blueprint, and the entire structure of your life begins to shift. You're not reacting to life. You're reacting to the stories you've been carrying inside it. There's a Zen teaching that says, when the mind is cloudy, the world looks cloudy. When the mind becomes clear, even suffering becomes lighter. Think of a monk sitting in a cold mountain temple. The world outside is harsh, the wind biting, the nights long. Yet somehow they radiate peace, warmth even, without changing anything around them. They learn something most of us never do. The world follows the mind, not the other way around. When the mind is calm, the body softens. When the heart is open, relationships feel possible again. When your inner world becomes spacious, even sadness has room to breathe. But when the inner world is cluttered with resentment, with regret, with unresolved grief, the outer world begins to echo that chaos. The pain you see outside is often the pain you haven't met inside. So many people past 60 feel stuck because they are trying to fix life by changing their circumstances. Moving houses, distracting themselves, clinging to routine, when what truly needs attention isn't the furniture around them, but the quiet storm within them. Monks understand this deeply. That's why they spend years looking inward, not outward. They know that if you clean the inner room, the outer weather no longer controls your peace. And here's the truth your heart has been waiting to hear. You don't need a new life. You need a new relationship with the life you already have. Not by forcing positivity, not by pretending you're fine, but by acknowledging what's living inside you, the fears, the memories, the disappointments you've carried for decades without ever placing them down. Because the first shift in your outer world comes from one brave act in your inner world. Honesty. Honesty about what hurts. Honesty about what you've avoided. Honesty about the stories that no longer fit the person you've become. You can't transform a life you're not willing to look at from the inside out. And once you're willing to be honest with yourself, even gently, the next stage of transformation begins. The art of releasing what you've carried for far too long. 2. The truth you avoid is the pain you live in. There are pains you can name. The knee that aches, the back that stiffens, the nights you can't sleep. But the most dangerous pains are the ones you've never spoken aloud. The pains you learned to carry quietly because you didn't want to burden anyone. The pains that settled into your body like stones, year after year, decade after decade. The resentment you swallowed instead of confronting. The regret you buried instead of grieving. The loneliness you hid behind polite smiles. The fear of aging you pretended you didn't feel. The heartbreak that never received a proper goodbye. These things don't vanish just because you silence them. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Unfelt emotions don't go away. They go inward. You begin to feel it physically. The tight chest, the heavy stomach, the constant fatigue. You begin to feel it emotionally. The irritability, the sadness, the sudden tears you can't explain. But none of this means you're weak. It means you're human. A human who was never taught how to face their inner storms. The Buddha once said, "Pain is certain, suffering is optional." Most of us misunderstand this. The monks aren't denying pain. They're refusing to imprison themselves inside it. In Zen monasteries, when an emotion rises, monks don't distract themselves. They don't run. They don't numb. They sit. They breathe. They bow to it, as if honoring a guest who has traveled far to deliver a message. Why? Because they know something the modern world forgets. The truth you avoid becomes the life you repeat. Think about how many years you've carried the same patterns, the same arguments in your head, the same guilt from decades ago, the same sadness that visits you late at night, the same fear that no one really sees you anymore. These inner wounds shape your outer world more than age ever could. You are not tired because of your years. You are tired because of your unspoken truths. There's a Zen story of a monk who carried a heavy bucket of water up a hill every morning. One day the bucket cracked. Water leaked with every step. The monk smiled and said, "Good. Now I see what I've been carrying." That is what truth does. It reveals the weight you pretended wasn't there. For many people over 60, the hardest truths are these. I miss being needed. I'm scared of being alone. I still carry hurt from years ago. I don't know who I am now. These truths are not weaknesses. They are doorways. Doorways to a new life if you are brave enough to open them. And courage does not mean shouting or reliving your trauma. Courage means acknowledging the truth with compassion, the way a monk would. I see you. You may speak. Healing doesn't begin with bravery. It begins with honesty. Because once you name the pain, it loosens its grip. Once you face it, you cannot control yourself. Once you acknowledge it, your inner world softens, and your outer world finally has room to breathe. And once the truth has been illuminated, once your hidden wounds have finally been seen, the next step becomes possible. The step monks consider the most sacred part of transformation: release. 3. Letting go is the most radical change you can make. There comes a moment in life, usually after 60, sometimes earlier, sometimes later, when you finally see the truth. You've carried far more than you were ever meant to hold. The disappointments you swallowed because you didn't want trouble. The resentment you pressed down because family is family. The betrayals you never spoke aloud because it's too late to change anything. And the grief of losing people, losing youth, losing versions of yourself you never mourned. We call those things the past, but they live in the present, in your posture, in your breath, in the heaviness you feel every morning before you stand up. You don't grow old when the years pass. You grow old when your heart remains stuck in the place where life hurt you. In Zen monasteries, monks practice the art of emptying the bowl. They pour out yesterday's water before filling it again, because stale water cannot nourish, and a full bowl cannot receive anything new. We humans forget this. We hold on too tightly to grudges, to sorrow, to the version of ourselves we were 20, 30, or 40 years ago. We cling to stories that no longer match the person we are becoming. Letting go is not forgetting. It's choosing peace over replaying pain. There's a Buddhist tale of a monk and an old man walking through a forest. When they reached a river, the monk carried the old man across on his back. Hours later, the old man complained, "My legs ache, my back hurts, and that crossing exhausted me." The monk smiled gently and said, "I put you down at the river. You're still carrying me." We do this with our past. We replay conversations from decades ago. We carry guilt from mistakes we paid for 10 times over. We hold on to anger toward people who no longer even remember what they did. We carry grief for loved ones who would want us to live again, not freeze in their absence. What you refuse to release becomes the weight that bends your spirit. Letting go does not require forgiveness in the traditional sense. It doesn't ask you to pretend it didn't hurt. It doesn't ask you to be spiritual or saintly. It simply asks you to stop bleeding for wounds that no longer bleed. Monks teach that release happens one breath at a time, not in grand gestures, not in emotional explosions, but in quiet decisions like, I don't need this memory today. I don't need this regret to define me. I don't need this bitterness to guide my choices anymore. I don't need to carry someone else's mistake in my heart. Aging is not the closing of life. It's the opening of wisdom. It's the moment your soul finally says, "You've suffered enough. Now let's make space for peace." Letting go is not losing. It's clearing the path. It's choosing light. It's saying, this chapter is complete. Even if no one apologized, even if healing arrived decades late, even if your heart still trembles when you remember. Release is not the end. It's the beginning of a new inner world. And the instant you let go, truly let go, something miraculous happens. The weight lifts, the breath softens. The body finally stops fighting itself, and your life, which felt stuck for so long, begins to move again. Because once the old stories finally lose their grip, your inner world becomes ready for the next great shift. Intention, the conscious, powerful rewriting of the life you still have ahead. 4. Intention rewrites your reality. There is a quiet miracle that happens once the past loosens its grip. Your inner world becomes open again, like soil after a long winter. What was once tight, guarded, exhausted, becomes soft enough to grow something new. And this is where intention begins its work. Most people believe their life will change when circumstances change, when health improves, when family visits more often, when loneliness fades, when things go back to how they used to be. But monks understand something far deeper. Life doesn't change when the world shifts. Life changes when you change the direction of your mind. Intention is not wishful thinking. It's not positive affirmations or pretending everything is fine. It is choosing consciously the direction your soul will walk next. It's saying, I will speak to myself kindly. I will move my body with love, not punishment. I will choose peace over panic. I will build a life that feels like mine again. Even at 60, 70, 80, intention has power. In fact, it may have more power now than ever, because wisdom sharpens intention the way time sharpens stone. There's a Zen story of an elderly monk who swept the same courtyard for 50 years. One day a young monk asked, "Why do you sweep it every morning? It hardly gets dirty." The old monk replied, "I am not sweeping the ground. I am sweeping my mind." That is the intention, the daily commitment to shaping the world inside you, so the world outside you begins to reflect it. Imagine this. If your dominant thought is fear, you will move fearfully. If your dominant thought is "I am alone," you will overlook every moment of support. If your dominant thought is "it's too late," your body will age faster than your years. But the moment your intention shifts, your life shifts with it. You don't need a new life. You need a new inner compass. When you wake in the morning and say, "Today I choose calm," your nervous system softens. When you say, "Today I choose to forgive myself," your breath expands. When you say, "Today I choose to build something small but beautiful," your spirit awakens from years of survival mode. This is why monks appear so peaceful. Not because life is easy, not because they avoid hardship, but because they refuse to live without intention. They make every step deliberate, every word mindful, every choice is infused with meaning, and slowly, intention becomes their reality. Even neurology reflects this truth. Your brain rewires itself based on repetition. Each thought you choose is a seed. Each intention you repeat becomes a new neural pathway. And where the pathways flow, your life follows. Most people try to change from the outside in. New routines, new diets, new surroundings, new distractions. But lasting change happens only from the inside out. Your life bends in the direction of your deepest intention. So ask yourself, what do I want my remaining years to feel like? Not look like, but feel like. Peaceful, meaningful, less lonely, more free, more true to who you've always been beneath the noise. Whatever your answer is, plant it, name it, hold it like a vow. Because intention is not a dream, it is a decision. A quiet, steady decision to redirect your inner world so the outer world finally has permission to follow. And when honesty reveals your wounds, when release softens your heart, when intention gives your life direction, there is one final step. The step where transformation becomes permanent, living from your inner world, not your past. There comes a moment, quiet, subtle, almost private, when you realize that life hasn't been fighting you. You've been fighting yourself. All those years of holding pain, swallowing disappointment, waiting for someone else to finally understand you. They shaped the world you lived in, not because life was cruel, but because your inner world had been carrying storms no one else could see. But here's the truth. No one told you when you needed it most. Life doesn't change when circumstances shift. Life changes the moment you do. When you soften inside, the world stops feeling so harsh. When you let go inside, the past stops pulling you backward. When you choose peace inside, even your body responds. Your breath deepens, your heart steadies, your days feel lighter. A healed inner world doesn't erase hardship, but it changes the way you walk through it. It reconnects you with your strength, the strength you forgot you had. It reminds you that every sunrise still belongs to you. Every moment still belongs to you. Your life, even now, is still unfolding. The day you change your inner world is the day your real life finally begins. So tonight, don't wait for tomorrow, or for someone else, or for the right moment. Sit quietly, place a hand over your heart, and whisper to yourself, "I'm ready to live from the inside out." Because once your inner world becomes peaceful, your outer world can't help but follow. If this message touched something inside you, reflect for a moment, share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for more healing, and pass this video to someone who needs hope tonight. Your next chapter won't be written by time, it will be written by the courage you found within yourself.